Okay, it's 10 o'clock, so we're going to officially start our Young Alumni Leadership Board webinar as part of Business of Flight Week. Thank you for joining us. If you're just tuning in, I am Shannon Gibson, and I'm the Dean of the David B. O'Malley College of Business. And this is our third annual Business of Flight Week. Glad to have you here. There are numerous events happening throughout the week, frequently downstairs in our College of Business atrium with panels that are both live and virtual, with people joining us from both the insurance industry, the marketing side of business, and everything in between. So I hope you'll be able to join us. This morning, you are joining a webinar with recent alumni who are going to share their experience in how they have started their career, the mistakes they've made and learned from, and how they're going forward. So this is really about the nuts and bolts of career launch. I'm going to start off by asking each member of the board to just give us a brief introduction. Let's start with Sloan.
Hi, I'm Sloan Churchill. I graduated from the O'Malley College of Business in spring 2019 with my master's in aviation finance. I'm currently a manager of asset valuations at MBA Aviation. So what we do is value commercial aircraft, engines, spare parts, simulators, and other aviation assets for transactions and securitization purposes. So that's primarily what I do.
Thanks, Sloan. Jason.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Alvarez. I graduated in the O'Malley College of Business at the time, the College of Business. So I'm glad to hear it's the O'Malley College of Business. I graduated with my undergrad in business administration with a concentration in management in December of 2013. And then I also did my master's in December of 2015. Currently a regional director at the Boeing company. So my primary functions is in sales and marketing. So I work a lot with our sales directors in terms of campaigns and also assessing our competitors, mainly Airbus. And then I also work closely with the campus team on the Boeing and Embry-Riddle partnership.
Thanks, Jason. Yulia.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Yulia Malueva, and I graduated from O'Malley College of Business with an MBA degree in 2014. And currently, I am a senior sourcing manager with Delta Airlines, and I'm leading a team of 3 here at Delta in Tech Ops. And we're responsible for contracts of consumables and expendables for Delta, as well as Delta MRO customers.
That's great. Owen.
Good morning. My name is Owen Thieck. I graduated from the O'Malley College of Business in December of 2022 with a degree in aviation business administration. And I'm currently the manager of sales and special projects at FlightAware, which is a Collins Aerospace and Raytheon company.
Needy.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Needy Trimbadia. I graduated from the College of Business, O'Malley College of Business, back in May of 2020. Prior to that, I did my MBA in aviation management, and I graduated from that back in December 2018. But since I love to study so much, I continued to proceed with my MSAF, which is the aviation finance degree. And I'm currently a financial analyst with Air Wisconsin Airlines. Primary duties involve forecasting, revenue and expenses for our crew side. So all the pilots, all our flight attendants, just forecasting their expenses and then tracking them on a regular basis.
Thank you, Needy. And last but not least, Chad.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Chad Stearns here. I graduated from the O'Malley College of Business back in 2019, graduated from the worldwide campus with my master's in systems engineering in 2022. I've worked for the Boeing company my entire career. I'm currently a senior project manager within the Phantom Works organization. Can't tell you exactly what I do. A lot of it's behind a closed door on the defense side of the business, but what I will say is, I coordinate with all the functions: engineering, supply chain, finance, business development, real estate, all of those folks in order to deliver a good product for our customer and for our internal stakeholders as well. So that's a little bit what I do. I'm also an adjunct faculty member for the School of engineering on the worldwide side as well. So excited to join today.
Thanks, Chad. I'm thrilled having all of you here. So the first question, and I won't have an order, so you can kind of sort who wants to jump in and answer. But talk to me about what was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome in landing either your first position or your current position, depending on which was the most challenging, I guess.
I can go first if that helps. So I think I'm the most recent graduate on the call. So my primary challenge was actually COVID. So I graduated in December of 2020, which was in pretty much the height of COVID at the time. Hiring was frozen at many organizations. So that was my biggest challenge. And even the folks that were hiring, I would say that traditionally students have quite a bit of leverage when they're entering a new company. During COVID, I would say there was almost no leverage for anyone. It was very much a take it or leave it situation. So navigating that was probably the biggest challenge that I had.
And can I add more onto Owen's, challenge? I graduated May of 2020, so the same exact thing. The world had just shut down in March, and trying to be in that situation where you're reaching out to your mentors, trying to get advice from them, but they were already in a tough situation themselves. So I think overall it was just a tough situation for a lot of graduates who went through that phase.
Yeah, I would say mine doesn't come near to that. I mean, I can't even imagine trying to get a full-time job right out of COVID. But I think for me, at least, it was the first internship was the hardest, and then everything kind of went well from there. The first internship I had was not in aviation, but I knew that I had in order to get in aviation, the company that I wanted to, the Boeing company, I had to pretty much work and get a first internship. So that was definitely the hardest, and obviously navigating how to get an internship, speaking to folks older, what they went through the process, career services, etc. So that was definitely the hardest. But having said that, it fails in the comparison to trying to get a job full time during COVID.
The challenge for me that I can share was that I was an international student at Embry-Riddle, and to find the first job was the biggest challenge, I think, especially taking that you're always on the clock and you have timing with the visa requirements and such. So I think dealing with the anxiety that you can't find a job, or when you can find a job, and sending out thousands of resumes and preparing for interviews was the most challenging part. And ever since, it just got better.
I
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing that, Yulia, because that's something that many of the students watching are struggling with. So your perseverance is a good story. Thank you.
For me, it was Hurricane Matthew that completely came into Daytona Beach and wiped out the career fair. Like they canceled it in advance. So you miss out on all those 300 whatever companies that were going to be there right at the time. And thankfully I was able to, Jason is the one that recruited me into the company. Actually, I was thankfully able to meet with him. But that was pretty much it. A lot of students were not able to go there and go to the career fair and get those internships and jobs. So that was a big thing back in 2016, that students had to go through.
Yeah, so I didn't really have to deal with COVID as a challenge for myself, but I would say one big challenge was just kind of keeping your spirits up a little bit, dealing with the job application process. It can be really, cutting to kind of your mindset when you're applying for lots of jobs and not necessarily hearing back, or interviewing and not getting jobs. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a process, but learning to not take it personally. This job process isn't a personal thing. That's definitely a big challenge that I had to work with personally.
I appreciate that, Sloan. Just like Yulia, that's really timely. We're just finishing the spring career fair, and I know a lot of students are feeling overwhelmed by the number of applications and hoping to get callbacks. So all of these are really good stories. We're still feeling the recessionary impact of the pandemic right now, or maybe it's where things are changing in the economy. There are companies that are doing layoffs right now. So there's a lot going on. So everything you say, all of you, really does resonate. I appreciate that.
Yeah, Dean Gibson, I was just going to add, that's a good point at the end. Some of the folks that I mentor that exact question, some want to get in the tech industry. They're non-aviation, but it kind of is applicable. So the advice to them would be get into a company or an industry that you may not be passionate about in the beginning, but right now it's not the time to be picky, because there's a lot of competition and a lot of folks are downsizing or whatnot. So it's one of those. We've been through the Boeing company with some of the incidents and also the COVID recession. So sometimes you have to think long term and not short term. So it may not be the company that you want to do, but a bird in the hand is very powerful. So I would highly recommend folks to look at that and think long term and not short term.
Yeah, and Jason, I'll just add on to that as well. So it may not be the starting function that you want either, right? So if you're even tangentially interested in any of the other industries, you may not be hiring. I'll just take Boeing, for example, right? We might not be hiring as much in supply chain, but we might be hiring a lot in finance. And if you're sort of interested in finance, but you want to really get into the Boeing company, you might consider taking that finance job as well. So, and that goes for any company, any function, but sort of just adding on to what Jason said, look at other companies and then look at other functions as well.
And location. I mean, I know right now we're hiring a lot in Mesa and certain St. Louis. So look at location. It might not be your primary location, but things change. So keep that in mind as well.
And you can always move around. That's the good news.
And when you take that first job, even if it's not exactly what you want, you show up every day and give it your all. I think that goes without saying, right?
Yeah, and that exact thing speaks volumes, right? If you're doing something that you're not necessarily the most interested in and you're still killing it every day at work, that speaks volumes about you, your character for the most part. But also you can go to another function and you might have impressed someone in that area that could either make a job for you or they're hiring or something like that. So you truly never know where that path leads. But yeah, get there, kill it, and then move around whenever you want.
All right, so the second question is the one that we promised with the teaser of the title. I'd like each of you to give an example or two of something you did in the early part of your career that you wouldn't necessarily do again. I don't want to call it a mistake, but maybe something you learned from, and what did you learn nonetheless? So mistakes that you've learned from, let them learn from you.
Maybe I can chime in here again first. So this is something actually I had to really think about. I will admit I'm not the type of person who reflects of like, okay, what mistakes I made? I think I do that on a much smaller basis, but looking back, I'm probably not as critical on myself as I should be. That will probably resonate with some other folks in the call that also know me as well. So in terms of the two mistakes that I can think of that I made, overall, I think just from someone who's now an alum who actually is in the workforce, I think the first one was simply just not retaining enough knowledge from college. I think a lot of students, including myself, they go to college, they only retain the knowledge that they need to pass the test or to get the grade. They don't actually consider, okay, what's applicable outside or once I leave this place that I need to consume now. And so I think that's a mistake that I made. I think I only really focused on what was imminent, what was important at the time, and not the long-term strategy of what I think was important to my career. There were a lot of classes that I thought maybe weren't important, but now I wish I had paid more attention in, especially like I'm not an accounting and finance person. I've worked in sales and strategy roles, but sales and strategy have a lot to do with finance. And when my finance team is asking me about numbers, I have to learn a lot of terms and stuff that I feel like I could have picked up in college, but probably didn't put a lot of attention towards. So that's my first mistake. And then my second mistake is honestly, I wouldn't say more mistake, but I guess a regret is just not spending enough time enjoying the college experience. I think most people, again, they come to college and the first thing that they think of is how fast can I graduate? How fast can I get out of this place? And I think most people don't spend time enjoying it. They think of it as like a task that they need to fulfill, which I can respect, but I think that the college experience is unique. You can only do it once, especially undergrad. And so I think you have to enjoy it a bit more. I think I focused a lot on coursework, a lot on work when I was in college, and not as much on enjoying myself or pleasure, which I think was a bit of a mistake because I'm not around the people that I was able to be around when I was in college. So those are my two regrets or mistakes, I would say.
Yeah, those are good, Owen. I'm going to hit on the second one that you said first. I think I can count up on one hand how many times I actually went to the beach. Truly. I mean, it was school, it was I was involved in student government. And although, Daytona has really changed since I was there, right? And it's only been 4 years, but still, I can really only count up on one hand how many times I actually went to the beach. And now living in Oklahoma City, where I am hundreds of miles away from a beach, that is something that I wish I would have taken advantage of a little more. That's sort of like a mini, vacation in and of itself. Just go down to the beach, drive 10 minutes and go from there. So I completely resonate with that one. And my second one, there might be some folks on the call that remember this particular incident. But I signed an email, warm regards, and I still have not lived that down to this day. So just be very careful about what you put in your email signatures, and what you think is nice as a freshman. Don't just think about that. That's more of a joke one, but yeah, putting warm regards is definitely something that I would not do again.
He will never live it down.
All right, I'm going to push you guys. I want work mistakes. I want you to push. I'm going to push on some work stuff that you did as a new employee. Let's share the ugly here.
I would say one of them. I don't know about another one, but I know definitely one when I was an intern. One of them was our SVP and CFO. An informational interview that he had reached out that he wanted, or I had reached out that I wanted to meet him. One of the things as an SVP and CFO, they're extremely busy in terms of their time, but as a first-time intern, I wanted to meet with him and get to know him. And one of his EAs, he had asked his EA to schedule it, and it hadn't been in a timely manner, I think a week or two. So I followed up and hadn't heard anything. And then I reached out to him and mentioned it. And then he had said, yeah, why isn't it scheduled? And he kind of gave a lot of flack to his EA, and I think that still sticks with me. But I obviously, it was one of those things that you learn, hey, the EA obviously is the gatekeeper, and you don't kind of go around them. But then I also use that as a learning moment in the sense of went upstairs and apologized for that. But her and I actually, to this day, have built a strong relationship, and she's still at the company and is around a lot of executives. So I think one of those things is, it was learning lesson to, yeah, be persistent, but also when you do make a mistake to apologize and own up to it. But it was one of those things that individual is still my mentor. So it's one of those things that I'm very glad that I was persistent, not just let it go. I think a lot of times people are just like, hey, that person hasn't responded. They're too busy. They must not have time. But you have to put yourself in their shoes, that they're extremely busy. They work not in hours, but in probably 15-minute increments. And it may be a top priority for you, but it may not be for them at that time because there's so much going on. So I would say be persistent, but also when you do make a mistake at that level, to apologize, because everyone, at the end of the day, that executive assistant does have a lot of power in terms of holding the calendars. The other one is not really work related, but it's mainly, I would definitely have done an internship my freshman and sophomore year. I think now at the Boeing company, we have internships even at high school students. We partner some in the St. Louis area. So I would definitely, I think I started mine my junior year, although I had 5 internships when I graduated my undergrad and my graduate degree. I think starting as a freshman or sophomore would definitely be something that I would change and look back on. That and also in addition to do more personal finance early on in my career. I started doing it around like 21, 22, but I think definitely that's something that's going to help you throughout your career. So those are probably 3 things that I would reflect on.
Ladies?
I'll go. I have a couple of things to add to what Jason just said. Kind of workplace situation. So I'm still fairly new at my job. I couple years in, and I'm still learning, different ways, different departments. But I'm in a unique position where I have to literally communicate with multiple departments, and I have to ask uncomfortable questions such as, why are we over budget? What's going on? Why is this negative variance and where it's coming from? And usually, people do have answers, but they don't want to be asked those questions right in the meeting, or they don't want to be put in a spotlight, right? So I think sometimes when I reach out, like initially when I would have questions for different people in different departments, instead of doing impromptu questions, I've started learning over time that scheduling meetings with these folks, having, weekly catch-ups or 2 weeks in, just have your questions prepared and ask them all at once instead of, hey, I was thinking about this, quick question here, quick question here. So I think that came in handy, but that's definitely something I did when I initially started, because like Jason said, you think that it's priority for you, but they already have a job that they're doing, and you want to make sure you're not interrupting that. So, I think that came in handy, just making sure you have weekly or bi-weekly touch points with these folks that you regularly work with. And I think the second thing, other than what Owen also mentioned, that you didn't take time for yourself, and it just leads to burnout. And I think I also brought that in my job here with me. Firstly, going through COVID, getting that job, being an international student, you have a timeline that you have to follow. If you don't get a job by this time, you want to make sure you adhere to it. But then what happens is you also get overwhelmed, because now you have the job, now you want to perform, you want to overdo it, but it leads to burnout. So I've had a few times when I needed to force myself to take a break, because that was the only option. So I would definitely say regular intervals, regular breaks, I think come in handy. And that's something that I think all of us are learning at this stage in our lives.
Yeah. Excuse me. For me, maybe this is a bit controversial. I'm not sure if other people on the panel have felt this way or experienced this, but I think a big challenge to overcome, honestly, was a bit of ego. And I've experienced this myself, but also seen it with other new graduates that we've brought in ourselves to my company. Is you come in, fresh from school, and you feel like you have all of this knowledge behind you, all of this maybe experience behind you from school projects and from your internships. And you kind of come into the job a little bit closed-minded and a little bit maybe feeling like you've got this, and that's a great mentality to have, but I've seen it kind of close people off to learning new things or realizing where their weaknesses are. And kind of realizing where your weaknesses are is a huge and really important part in growing in your job and learning really quickly. For my role in particular, there's a really steep learning curve, and I'm sure that applies to a lot of the other roles here. And I've seen, I know myself, I needed a little bit of an ego check sort of in the beginning to realize, there's a lot more work to be done, and there's a lot more to learn than even I thought that there was. And I've seen that not just, with myself, but with other candidates coming in. So I don't know if that's something that other people have experienced, but for myself, that, that kind of quick ego check in the beginning of starting a new role was definitely important for me, and a challenge I had to deal with.
I wanted to build in to need his story, how, when you get a new role and you get sucked in into your responsibilities and you work really hard to prove yourself and to show that you are capable and responsible, it's very easy to lose the bigger picture, and it's very easy to just focus on your responsibilities and not seeing how it actually affects your career in general, and how much you learn and how much you do. And it's really hard to appreciate in the moment. And then it takes sometimes years, to realize how much you actually done and appreciate how much you know now, even though in the moment that can be really overwhelming, and you can feel that you're just burning out, and in the end, when you look back, you look at the projects and you look at your resume and you say, wow, I've done so much. And those are huge numbers, those are huge accomplishments. So when you find yourself in the routine and overwhelmed, just remember that you're building on something, and that will show the results. And sometimes it takes time to see them.
I really appreciate all the honesty here. Sloan, yours in particular. I'm going to share mine. The biggest mistake, or one of my bigger mistakes, things I wouldn't do again, just because it's funny and some of you will laugh, and it kind of goes with what Sloan was talking about. I was a new associate dean, so this has been 10, 11 years ago. And I was in a meeting with my dean with some external university partners. And the partners, the industry people, asked the dean a question. And from my perspective, and from a factual perspective, the dean answered incorrectly. He answered not factually correct. And so my face probably betrayed me, which lesson one, get your emotions under check. And one of the industry partners looked at me and said, well, Shannon, what do you think about what the dean said? And I said, well, in all due respect, and I answered, and my dean pulled me aside and he said, Shannon, when you start a question with in all due respect, you're about to disrespect somebody. And he was right, and I was wrong. It didn't derail me. I was very fortunate. I had a boss who pulled me aside and said, you need to learn to think about what I'm saying and why I'm saying it. And he said, you could have actually fixed my facts without saying what you said. A little bit of ego and enthusiasm is amazing, but being humble enough to think about the bigger picture, like Julia says, and what you're doing is huge. So that was I still look back on that. And whenever I'm ever tempted to start a sentence with, in all due respect, I recognize there's no respect about to come out of my mouth. I'm about to probably be a brat. So I'll leave that one with you. That's my honest answer. All right. Sometimes we don't have to make the mistake, thankfully. And just like with the purpose of this video, we want others to learn from where we could have done better. I'd like you to share an opportunity or something you saw from someone you work with, perhaps someone senior to you, no name shared, that you learned from, you saw their mistake and what you took away from that and how that helped you. So who wants to go first?
I can go first again. So there are a couple of things here. This is a really good question. I'm probably a very opinionated person, so I certainly have opinions on what I see other people do. The first one is a lot of times I see people at work, regardless of who they are, is just not reading the room. Like there are just some comments you don't make at certain times, then sometimes you need to understand that there's a place and time to say things and there's not. So that's something that I've learned as well from both my own mistakes and others. So that's one important thing. Number two, having sympathy for other people and being empathetic is actually really, really important in the workplace. You can say business is about numbers all day. In reality, if the people within your business or the way you're operating is not centered around the people that are contributing, you're never going to succeed. So in my opinion, you always have to take care of your people. I have seen instances of where that's not happened. Thankfully, where I work today, that is rarely ever an occurrence. I think people are the core focus of what we do every day. Like I said, in reality, business is about people. And then the last thing I would say is there's a lot of people, I would say, especially my age, so recent grads in the workforce that simply do not network or build relationships enough. This industry is built on relationships and networking and who you know. And for all the folks that aren't doing that today, they're making, in my opinion, a huge mistake. And there's going to be a lot of growth opportunity available. And I just feel like if you don't build a solid foundation that you can build upon in terms of who you know across the industry, not just at the companies that are similar to yours, but across the industry, in my opinion, you'll lag behind the competition. And when I say competition, I don't mean other companies. I mean competition as in other people. In reality, a career is somewhat competitive, right? Because we all want to be at the top, or I would say most people have a goal to grow their career, and without building a relationship and networking with others, you'll never get there, in my opinion.
Okay.
I completely agree. Oh, go ahead, Chad.
Nope, you got it. Go ahead.
I was just gonna kind of piggyback off of Owen a little bit. It is hard to think about kind of mistakes that other people have made, but I think similarly, I've seen a lot of, at least recently and with younger graduates, a bit of burning bridges and a bit of not investing in the relationships around you, even just from like kind of a more of a peer perspective. And exactly what Owen said, you know, things are competitive, but you still have to build those relationships. And there's a lot more these days moving from company to company than, you know, maybe there used to be. And, you know, you have to be careful not to burn those bridges along the way. And I've definitely seen a lot of that happening recently. And this industry is so small, even though, you know, pretty much all of us on this panel work in different corners of the industry. We all are connected and we all run into each other. And, you know, it's so important to not burn bridges and to really be aware of the people around you.
Yeah, so I have a few things. So it's a very common practice that I've seen, and it's probably industry-wide. Whenever new people start to come in, some people that are more senior at the company like to hold on to what they have as they feel that their job might be threatened. That's not the case. And oftentimes they're in a different function, but they still have that mindset of, man, what am I doing wrong? That type of thing. And it's really not that, right? I'm a firm believer in seeing that everybody should sort of know how to do on a team, at least generally what you do. And particularly if you're working on that same team, being able to pick up where someone else left off, if you're out sick, or if God forbid something else happened that's harmful to you, right? That doesn't help the company grow. That doesn't help the industry grow if you hold on to certain things, because at the end of the day, everyone has a retirement date, right? That's what it is. And if you're going to have other people prepared, and if you want the team to succeed, to sort of share that. And I'm actually going to share something that I've seen with some new hires that have come in as well, is they are afraid to ask questions in a room with other senior people. Whether that's in this case, particularly that I'm thinking about, it's with a senior director in the room, and it's with several of your, level 4, level 5 employees and senior managers and stuff. And after the meeting, they came and asked me all these questions that I had no idea what the answer was to, but those people in the room knew exactly what it did. And they needed that to go solve whatever problem that they got tasked in that meeting. So, I mean, I think the importance of truly seeking the answers that you need, right? And being able to voice those, and of course, listen to those answers on the tail end. So it's important across the board, no matter what level you are, no matter how new you are to the company, no matter how new you are to the team, come in and answer those questions, because honestly, someone might have that same question or not know that they have that question, and now they have the answer to it in the room.
Yeah, I was going to just say two words was listen to in action. So listen was one of the advices that I was given early on from one of my mentors. He had mentioned 3 pieces of advice, but he said the main thing is remember to listen. And he did a great job of listening. What he meant by that was listen to people at all levels. He says, whether you're an executive or whether you're just a new hire, is to listen very carefully before you speak. Don't be thinking of what you're going to say and counter, but really truly listen. And I think that's really prominent, especially even if you're an executive, is to listen to all people, because everyone has tidbits and answers. So what he did a good job was he had mentees at his level, but also all the way down to the factory floor and interns as well, because he really got a perspective of how things are going on, what things can be improved, because he's overseeing a big organization. So listening, and then also taking action. Like Chad mentioned, if you're in the room, be at the table regardless of level, but also take action, and you'll build a name for yourself. So I think listening and take action is two big things that will serve you well. And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO of the company, if you're not doing those things, the employees will know, and I think it'll impact the whole organization.
I have a couple things to add. First of all, when you already accepted the offer, do not try to come back and negotiate the salary afterwards. That is one of the mistakes that seem to be common sense, but we had a story, and I'm pretty sure the faculty of College of Business who've been around in 2014 remember that story, that 3 of us got job offers from the same company, the 3 graduates of the same year, and all 3 of us accepted the offers, and one person decided to come back to hiring manager afterwards and tell them they would love to start the job, but they would like them to reevaluate the salary and that they're worth more. So with that, the company was kind of nice and came back to them and said, well, it's a little bit too late in the process, and we already told HR that you accepted, so no. But unfortunately, the person was persisting, and they started sending more messages to the hiring manager, and in the end, the offer was revoked. So that's very important to know what is the good time to talk about money and salaries. And another important thing is to understand your compensation and what compensation means. For some companies, it's just the base salary that you're talking about. For other companies, that would be the total compensation that includes bonuses and your base salary and the contributions and profit sharing, or other things that company throws on top of that. So it's very important to understand what you're talking about and what you're negotiating before you give your final answer to the job offer, and not coming back afterwards, of course. And the other thing I wanted to add is, as much as social media can help you networking and landing a job, it may go the other direction and hurt. So be very careful what you're posting online. And one specific example is when you call in sick, do not post pictures from the beachside with a mojito saying that, wow, life is great, because you never know who can take a look, and sometimes it just spreads around and the rumors come to HR department, and it may come all the way to termination of employment or revoking your benefits or whatever it may be. And of course, it's not a good image in general. So just wanted to add that, because sometimes I see things and hear things that again may seem like common sense, but unfortunately people forget, or you're in a good mood and want to share with your friends, but just please be careful, because it may affect your professional life and career.
Can't emphasize that one enough. That is a very important one, particularly when social media is on the up and up, right? And there's platforms that I barely know anything about now, but TikTok, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those things. Please watch what you post. Do you necessarily want a picture of a red Solo cup on the beach while you're on spring break? Not necessarily. Just watch what you post, because they will go through your Facebook, and particularly when you're looking at on my own in the defense industry, right? We have to have security clearances. The investigators will go through your Facebook, and they will bring printouts of exactly what you posted and ask you to explain it. So not only just for the job, but keep in mind any prospective customers in the future might do research on you. And then of course the United States government, if you do have to get a security clearance. So can't emphasize that one enough.
Yeah, and even if you don't need a clearance, I think a lot of times they're looking through your social media and they're not even telling you. So if they revoke an offer or something, they may not even ask you questions. I think in Chad's case, hey, prove what is this? And I think that's, at least you can explain yourself. But in other instances, they're not even going to explain yourself. They're already making their informed decision based on what they saw. So that's very important. The second thing, in terms of compensation, Yulia, that's a great point. I think a lot of companies are shifting, we are, for example, is to make sure that the salary range is before a job offer. I think that's a huge, in terms of salary transparency, that's a huge thing to make sure that candidates are knowing what the range is. And if it's out of your range, either below your range, well, great, because now it's higher than what you thought. And if it's below, then you can go back and forth. So I think it's really important to understand where the salary compensation is and to ask follow-up questions like, is this base salary? What does this include? So to be really clear on the front end before the interview and before you're kind of backs against the wall and not negotiating when you're at basically when you're looking weak, rather than in the beginning where you have a lot to ask for. And then sometimes it's good to ask if you have an offer, to ask, do you offer relocation? Do you offer other things? Because don't always look at base salary. That's obviously very, very important, but there's other things that the hiring manager of the company may throw in: signing bonus, like I said, relocation, or other tuition assistance. So make sure to keep all that in mind, but definitely do your homework and use the resources so you're not basically negotiating after they said it's already done. Because a lot of times companies have compensation groups that basically are looking at it, or looking at how they benchmark externally. So there's been a lot of research when they give you that offer, but if you're basically trying to do that, it looks really bad. And even if you do come in, that'll always be in the hiring manager's back mind, like, hey, this individual kept being persistent after I said no multiple times. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and Jason, completely agree. I see some people, both senior and newer into the company, that leave the company because they're making 10, 20, 30K more, right, in their base salary. Now, what they don't tell you is how much are you paying for insurance? How much are they matching your 401k? All of those different things that come together, that they're not looking at that total rewards, total benefits type mindset. And that's extremely important. And then you see those people come back and are like, wow, well, that was a significant waste of my time because they didn't explain all of those in advance. So asking those hard questions in advance, that's extremely important.
A lot of great points have been made, so I just keep it brief. Couple of things, in my opinion and experience so far, your senior leaders are here to help you grow professionally. It's all about taking that leap and just walking over to someone's office or scheduling a meeting with them and talking to them about what your goals are. I noticed somebody kind of being hesitant just because, like, I think it was mentioned that, they're your senior leader. Sometimes you're afraid to speak up, but they're still a human being. So I think in the end, if you prepare yourself, just talk to them, ask your questions, tell them this is the pathway I'm heading towards, how can I help the company? How can the company help me get there? I think those are really important questions, and they really have good answers for you and will definitely help you, guide through that path that you want to follow. And second thing, I think somebody talked about, leaving a position because somebody's paying you 20, 30K more than what you're currently making. While that is a great, monetary addition to what you want in your life, I think loyalty with your company, it also matters a lot, because we had somebody, I know somebody who had an instance where they applied for a new job, but their reason for rejection was the fact that they did not complete 2 years at their current company. So they were leaving for, X number of reasons, but the new company said, 2 years, not even 2 years, and kind of we see that as a hindrance. So I think loyalty with your company, if you can manage it, if there are circumstances where you just need to leave, it's different, but I think it's important. Yeah, thank you.
I'll throw two things in there. The faculty will see if you tell them that you're sick and you go to the beach too and you post it. So it's not just your employer you run that risk with. We get that one here. So we do catch on to it eventually. And then Needy, I really appreciate your comment. I had a board member earlier this week describe the hiring practice, not from one of our students or one of our alumni. He was hiring a mid-level manager on the aviation finance side of the world. And the young woman, it was a young woman, was 29 years old and had done her undergrad and her MBA. So she got out of school at, let's just say 24-ish. And at the end, when we all, when the employer asked during the interview, so is there any last comments, any last things you want to say to help me, know I should hire you? Her response was, well, I'm extremely loyal to my company. Since I finished up my MBA, I've only been with 3 organizations. And he kind of went, wait, so in 6 years, you've only been with 3 companies and your pitch is you're extremely loyal. I think this goes back to Owen's read your audience. There's some awareness there. Know what you're getting into because it does matter, and learn from these stories. They're great.
Well, Dean Gibson, just on that point, I think if you have to say you're loyal, I think that's a problem. I think loyalty speaks for itself, and I think people can see based on actions and based on performance, based on what they see on their resume. I think if you're saying, "Hey, I'm very loyal," I think to me personally, it's a red flag. I think people know if someone's humble, someone's loyal, and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah, agree with Jason. Actions speak louder than words in the workplace, for sure.
Oh, good advice. All right, so I asked you what was your biggest challenge in landing your current position or landing your first job or your first internship. Career-wise, what is on the horizon now, or what have you faced? What have been your career challenges during the past few years since you graduated?
I can get started. I think for me, kind of post entering the workforce, there's been a couple of challenges that I've dealt with. I think right now, like a big challenge, particularly in my side of things, is dealing with the constant change and constant really just change in focus in the industry. Like since I've started, we've really moved a focus towards ESG and environmentalism. And when I started, that wasn't really, a thing and that we were focusing on as strongly in the industry. And now, we're seeing aircraft like eVTOLs and electric aircraft and new engineering coming out that, I am not as educated in. And so the biggest challenge in that sense has really been just keeping up with all the changes in the industry, keeping up with what's going on. Your learning process never stops, and kind of realizing that this industry changes a lot really quickly is really important, and that's always a challenge to kind of incorporate and to keep up with. And another challenge that I've dealt with personally from a little bit more of a personal perspective and as a woman in this industry, I have dealt with a bit of sexism and a bit of challenge in terms of managing kind of myself and my career progression. And I'm very grateful that I work for a company that is primarily female led, and they're absolutely amazing. But I do recognize that a lot of this industry is not. And as a woman in the industry, that's definitely something that I've dealt with, and things are changing, and I have seen a lot of change even just in the past few years, the 4 or 5 years that I've been in this industry. But it's something as a woman that I do have to think about, and sometimes have to fight a little bit extra or work a little bit harder just to kind of show up for the majority of this industry that may be like older men that aren't as willing to give you a chance. So, you definitely building the connections definitely helps tremendously, but I've still, even so, dealt with a lot of those kinds of issues. So definitely something that, the industry is changing but something to keep in mind, and something that I've definitely had to face myself.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly agree with Sloan, and especially about the sentiment of dealing with change. The job that I work now, or the company that I work at now, was acquired 2 months after I started working there. So obviously that is a massive change, going from a company of 120 people to 200,000. Within several months is pretty challenging, and change never stops at big organizations. The larger the organization, it will never stop, and it's something you have to learn to cope with as you move throughout your career, right? And there are certainly going to be, some detrimental impacts to being to change happening, but there are certainly also going to be benefits and opportunities that arise from change as well. So I agree on that front. I also noted that for me, it was hard to navigate corporate structure. So corporations are very bureaucratic, very political. And so figuring out how as a new employee to navigate that is very, very difficult in my opinion. So that's been one challenge that I've had to overcome as well, that I wanted to share. And then on the topic of kind of growth and change, I think for a lot of people, and I'm not going to say myself necessarily, but I've observed this with people that I'm friends with or people that I've mentored throughout the years, is that people compare themselves to everyone. And when you're in the workforce, you cannot compare yourself to anyone else, because at the end of the day, no two people are the same. And so that's the comment that I want to make is stop comparing yourself to others, because everyone is going to have a different track throughout the career. So that's my 2 cents.
Good challenges, and you're right about the change. Other challenges on the horizon, or challenges that you've struggled with as you've worked on building this career?
I mean, I think challenges, especially for all of us on this panel and for myself included, I think is just navigating and being patient in terms of the next job role. I think a lot of us all want to be executives one day, but I think is just being patient in the process. In personal experience, I've seen folks throughout my career and people that I mentor that want to be an executive tomorrow. So I think it's really important to humble yourself and to just continue to grow and develop, and not just look at the destination, but the journey along the way. So I think for me personally, I think it's been good to just surround yourself with people that have been there, that have taken the long way, and that are successful now, and learn from them, and know that to be successful, it's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be challenges along the way. So just to be resilient and continue down the path, and not be solely focused on titles or solely focused on milestones, but it's a long journey, and to be patient. And I think it's back to the loyalty, is that those that are loyal stay with companies and learn and do a lot of job roles within the company. And I'm not saying don't ever leave a company and say that for 100 years. It's good to move around, but to be focused on kind of what your goals and ambitions are, and to what Owen said, not solely focus on what others are doing and this person's this title, but focus on what you really want to do and get after it.
Okay, I'm going to use that as the transition and combine the last two questions, because y'all have been great and we've had lots of conversation. But these last two questions, you all have to answer. There's no escaping this one. One, I'm going to ask you to step out of your humble status a moment and share with the audience, what is the accomplishment you've had since graduation you are most proud of? And it can be personal or professional, but what is your biggest accomplishment? What are you most proud of? And then two, one or two, no more than 2 points of advice for everyone watching this and learning from you. So advice to the upcoming graduates, if you will. And I'm going to call so we don't miss. Yulia, we're going to start with you.
Sure. I think my biggest accomplishment is the ability to lead a team and to actually make a difference in somebody else's life. I'm very proud that our former co-op is now full-time employed, and she did an MBA degree recently, and she got a full-time position. And I continue mentoring her and growing her in her career, and seeing someone grow is really rewarding. So you can reflect on yourself that, yes, I took steps in my career and grew and took better jobs and so on. But when you help someone else to do that, it's something different. It's much more rewarding. It's much more important, and you feel so inspired. And sometimes you don't need to be a very high-level executive to do that. And sometimes it can be peer-to-peer consulting, or just giving advice and just talking to someone very authentically, just on the friendly level, to understand what people are struggling with, because sometimes it's very similar to what you either went through or going through. And that just human feeling that, oh, that person had already that in their lives, or, oh, this is something very similar I'm experiencing, helps so much and goes so far that, you know, I enjoy that, and I believe that it's the biggest accomplishment.
It's also great advice. Wow.
Thank you. And for the current students and somebody who is applying for roles right now, you got this. You will get your opportunity for sure. Believe in yourself and go for it. Apply, go to an interview, do your best, and take a chance. And sometimes, you know, you're applying for something that you think you're not qualified, but you never know who else applied, or you never know what the team is looking for. Because now from my experience, when you're looking for a new employee in your team, you're not exactly looking for that specific skill set, or do they know Excel that well, or do they know this and that? And can they build a model? For the most part, you're looking for a person that you can work with and teach them, and you will feel comfortable, and they will be a good addition to your team and be compatible with the current members. So sometimes when you don't get a job and you believe that you're fully qualified and you did really great on the interview, don't take it personal, because sometimes hiring manager just looks at their current team and they don't believe that you will fit. It doesn't have to do anything with you. It's just how, you know, the team operates. And sometimes, you know, you may not know special software or have certain skill, but your personality fits so well. They will look at it and they will evaluate that, sometimes higher than, you know, the hard skills. So, you know, my advice, just go for it and you will get it.
Great advice. All right, Chad, you get to follow Yulia. That's a hard one.
That is a very tough one to follow. So I think the greatest accomplishment for me thus far was becoming instructor for Worldwide. Just being able to continue to give back to my alma mater in that way. I think some common things that a lot of feedback that I've heard, at least, right, and in the academia piece and the industry piece, is there's not usually you know, academia is focused on the academics, right? There, and I know it's gotten better now, but having that industry link in there, right? And what better than someone working in the industry to be that, to ensure that they get current news, and then to ensure that, you know, overall, I can be like, oh, I just dealt with this in my role, right? Here's what I did, and here's what happened, and this is how it relates to this assignment. The two pieces of advice that I have for students. So the first one, and I know this one is going to be probably another little bit of a controversial subject, but I highly recommend / suggest for every young person to go into the office. We had that discussion before we were on the call. The only reason I've done the most virtual work now is because I'm relocating to St. Louis. So I can't actually be in St. Louis every day, but go there, learn people's names, get to know them. I can say for this role that I'm in personally right now in Phantom Works, I got called for two reasons. First, because I was in the office back in COVID. I was one of the only ones on the 6th floor, and that CFO is coming around and just walking around the floor talking, because on a call, because he could, there was no one else there, and he would see me. And he saw me pretty much every day. And that goes a long way. Being able to get to know somebody face to face. It's so important for you early in career, particularly if you want to move up. If I see someone every day versus someone that I just know online, I really don't know how you behave in person. I'm going to probably go with the one that I know in person, right? So there's that one. I know there's a lot of virtual work roles, and I know the world is changing, but you'd also take a look and see how many companies are actually calling their employees back into the office. And it's a staggering number of employers. And the second thing, it sort of goes along with Yulia's second point, get outside your comfort zone. I was telling one of my mentees the other day, take the job that scares you, because that's the one that you're probably going to learn the most in. No matter if you think you're qualified for it or not, whether you think you know who's applying or not, you truly never know the facts. And that's exactly how I got into my role that I am now, before applying for a senior level position when I'm 4 years into the company, right? A lot of people told me just to my face, that's probably not going to happen, right? But it happens. So going along with that, applying, putting your name in the hat, and you never know what happens, truly. But get outside your comfort zone and strongly consider going into the office when you're starting your career.
All right, Sloan, what are you most proud of? And I'm going to cut you to one piece of advice since we're running short on time.
All right. I think for myself, I'm really excited about, just 4.5 years into my company, becoming a bit of an industry expert, being asked to speak on panels and to contribute to articles has been a really exciting kind of trajectory in my career for myself. But in terms of advice to graduates, I would say, one of my favorite questions that I've been asked when I've been hiring people, especially right out of school, one of my favorite questions was, okay, now that I've gotten the job and, before I get started, usually there can be a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, they ask me, what can I do to prepare and what can I do to be ready for when I start this role? And that was definitely one of my favorite questions. I can't answer that question for you necessarily. It depends on your role, but I was able to give, very specific skills that I wanted this person to work on, whether that was in Excel or writing or research or whatever that may be, so that when they came in, they were prepared exactly for the day-to-day of their job. So I would suggest, reach out to whoever your new manager may be and say, hey, are there any specific skills, anything I can do to prepare myself for my first day, to be as ready as you can be. So that's my piece of advice.
Fabulous advice. All right, Jason, most proud of one piece of advice.
Well, I'll start with the latter, the piece of advice, and kind of hones in on kind of what I already said earlier today is be persistent. I think persistency goes a long way, in being humble, but the persistence part is being persistent to find a mentor, be persistent to get an internship or find a job, and also seek knowledge. I think persistency, we all in the workforce, whether it's you're a top employer, whether you're a small company, persistence goes a long way. But having said that, is being persistent is a good thing. Don't be annoying. So I think just know the balance between persistence and annoying, and where someone's getting annoyed at you. I think my biggest accomplishment is helping lead and start the Boeing Scholar Program back in 2019. I think that really focusing on making sure that talent comes into the company, but also those underrepresented and those folks that may not have the opportunity financially or first generation, that they really have a voice, and also seeing it that one of those individuals that I can think of top of my mind is going to be a star coming to our company, and we're in 2023. So to fully see that individual be the first cohort out of the program and be such a tremendous asset to not only to us, but to the university, and to see his growth has been definitely my biggest accomplishment. And I think it'll be a program that will have a legacy for years to come.
That's good. All right, Owen, big accomplishment and advice. And then Needy, you're going to close us down.
So accomplishment, honestly, just being a trusted resource inside the company. Like, I get shocked the questions I get asked on a daily basis, and often I find myself asking, why are they asking me? I'm like 23 years old and I'm a recent college grad. But so honestly, I like every day I'm just like, wow, this is kind of amazing. And I really feel like it is an accomplishment. And then my piece of advice, just two quick pieces of advice, I know we're short on time, is never stop learning. It's kind of building on Jason's point, be persistent. The minute you stop learning, and that's honestly, in my opinion, the minute you start building yourself as a person. And then secondly, take every opportunity you can, every single one. Whether you're a student or if you're an alum, take every single opportunity. So that's what I've got.
And Needy, your biggest accomplishment, don't be humble, and you get to give final words to our students on site.
Biggest accomplishment, I think every single person, but especially if you're an international student, I know you'll relate to this. It's it's a great feeling when you come out the other end, when you apply for that job. It's going to be a tough path. I promise you it's going to be challenging. When you come out of the other end, when you've got that job, when you move to your new city, when you have your own apartment, when you have your own car, promise you it feels really proud. Each day, go back home, it's all yours. You built this. You put in your hard work, you got this, you have it, and just continue working hard every day, show up, have great coffee. My piece of advice if you're a coffee drinker. Have great coffee and just, everybody said great things, talk to your peers, communicate, over communicate, do all those things. But one thing that I want to do, and as much as I can in my future, is pass this along to every single person that I can. Whether you're a new graduate, whether you're looking for a job, whether you're just applying to school. I've had some people reach out to me asking me about my school experience as a student. And I would love to pass along my experiences to everybody. So I think just doing that and holding on to your experiences and sharing them with people in the future, I think would do this world great. So that's my piece of advice.
Thank you all. You are amazing. There is a reason every one of you have persisted on this Young Alumni Board and continue to give back. You talk about it and you really do it. For those of you watching, we'll be taking applications to have one of these fabulous alumni serve as formal mentors in the very near future. So if you're interested, be thinking about that. And again, just as they said, take every opportunity, and those opportunities include the numerous places you'll see chances to engage during Business of Flight Week. Thank you for your time, both my panelists and our people viewing, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great day, everybody.